Hello, I'm Richard Freudenberg. I have decided to run for Congress because I think it's where we need to be. My motivation is really to try to make a positive change. I went to WSU, Washington State University, as an undergrad. I graduated with a 4.0 grade point average. I went to law school at the University of Washington School of Law. After that, I thought it was important to serve my country after 9/11, and I decided to join the U.S. Air Force as a JAG. I served on 8 years active duty in the Air Force. While in the Air Force, I worked on international agreements with Portugal. I worked, while deployed in Iraq, on the prosecution of insurgents. I also worked with senior Iraqi officials on whether or not to release detainees in our custody, deciding on the threat levels associated with those detainees. After that, I went to Joint Base San Antonio and I joined that team to create one of the largest DoD installation legal offices in the country, really the Department of Defense. So that was important to me to continue to serve there. I ended up running that office, or leading that office, providing legal services to about 8,000 military, about 80,000 people, and about 130 to 140,000 students annually. I decided after that I needed to stop working 7 days a week and take care of my 1-year-old and 3-year-old at home. So I joined the Washington Air National Guard, and I was at Fairchild Air Force Base ever since. It's been a fantastic opportunity, and I've really appreciated that. That said, I also have things outside of the military. I retired on May 1st of this year to do this because I saw what was going on in the community, what was happening to our people, what was happening to our military, how they were being used and abused. That said, I'm also into Scouts, and I've done a lot of Scout activities. My son just earned his Eagle Scout, so I'm pretty jazzed about that. And I'll look for the opportunity to continue to talk with you more. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Richard.
Good job.
All right, next we have Kevin Fagan.
Hey everyone, Kevin Fagan here. Really excited to be standing in front of you. Thank you all so much for coming out. I think all of us know that obviously participating in our democracy, this upcoming primary election and general are very huge. And so I appreciate all of you coming out and spending your evening with us. So my name is Kevin Fagan, background in climate change and sustainability. I went to Gonzaga University and I've spent the last 5 years working in the climate change and sustainability space. And so what that looks like is we work closely with organizations such as tribes, local businesses, local governments on improving their environmental impact and reducing their costs. And so a lot of times these are difficult conversations that take place in the back of house of a commercial kitchen, saying, here's how you can recycle, put your food waste in the compost bin, and at the end of the day, we'll save you money on your trash costs. So this work is, for me, very mission driven. It's, at each day, I know that I'm waking up and making a difference, ideally preventing the worst of climate change and helping our communities prepare for climate impacts. But climate change is only one piece of the puzzle and only one of the things that's not getting solved right now by our current federal legislator. And so I decided to run for Congress because this issue, the fear and angst that my generation has around climate change is also equal with the frustration that we feel that no matter how much work we put in, no how many, like our working class people, we continue to not see the results, the fruit of our labor really materialize into anything. It's becoming harder to buy a home. It's becoming harder to really find a fulfilling job. And each and every day I know that needs change. And we look up and see a representative in Michael Baumgartner who can't even show up for his people, and he's defending the Epstein files, he's defending Trump's corruption, and we're tired of it. And so that's exactly why I'm running. Thank you.
These guys are so good.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, next, David Womack.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you again. I feel like I've got to know about half the room here in our 5 trips to Colville so far. So feels a little bit like coming home. So thanks for coming out tonight and listening to me again. If you haven't been in one of the listening sessions or one of the town halls we've held up here, I am David Womack. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running. I am a retired Air Force colonel. My last position in the Air Force was as the medical group commander at Fairchild Air Force Base. After that, I ran 2 rural civilian hospitals, one in Illinois, surrounded by corn and soybeans, And then after that, I had the good fortune to come back to Eastern Washington and be the CEO of the hospital in Colfax, surrounded by wheat and lentils. After that, I ran a large non-for-profit healthcare system in the Central Valley of California, surrounded by fruits and nuts. And then citrus trees and nut trees. Let me be really clear. Sorry about that. While I was there, I was also the chairman of an economic development corporation. In the last year I was there, we brought 4,000 new jobs into the community. That was the summation of a lot of years' work. We didn't do that every single year. But that was a public-private partnership where we brought everybody together around the table, government officials, concerned community members, business people, and our mission was to bring jobs to the community. After that, my wife and I chose to come back to Eastern Washington, and we now live in Walla Walla, the far southwestern part of this district. I bring all that up to illustrate that I think the job in Congress is bringing people to the table and being able to find solutions with people who have different issues, different agendas, but we can find a common way forward. And I think I have a history of doing that, and would love to talk to you more about that when the thing quits digging.
All right, thank you, David. Bajan, you can go next.
Good evening. My name is Bajan Mavalwala. Bajan rhymes with Cajun. Mavalwala rhymes with Walla Walla. If you still have trouble, just remember that Bajan Mavalwala backwards is Alawafim Najab. You should have no trouble whatsoever. I am a resident of Stevens County. As I travel up and down across this district, I hear an awful lot of Democrats complaining about how red their area is. My answer is, really? Okay, I live outside of Waits Lake, up Little Sweden Road, about a mile, in a log cabin out there. I heat the place with firewood I cut myself. I know a lot of you know folks like that, and I am one of them. I want to talk to you tonight about what I am in this race for. And that is to defeat Michael Baumgartner. I am not in this for a respectable loss come November. The Democratic Party has continually told Democrats to go out and vote harder. That gets us 45% at the top. Lisa Brown got 45%, Goldmark got 45%. Victory lies in disengaged Republicans, disengaged Democrats, and swing voters. And if we are not out going to them where they are and giving them a reason to cross that line, we will lose. We will be happy to answer questions for you as we're going through the evening.
All right, thank you, Bajan. Carmela, you're up.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. It's a wonderful day out there, a little warm. It would have been easy to stay home and relax in front of the air conditioning. So I appreciate everybody's civic mindedness in coming out. It's good to be back in town again. I was last here for the Veterans Day event that the VFW put on. And what I've been hearing as I've been all up and down the district over the last year and a half or so is that people are really starting to feel the pinch with especially with our $1 billion a day war underway, that gasoline, groceries, diesel, fertilizer, all prices are up while paychecks or pensions stay flat. Mortgages and rents are both unaffordable. Our rural hospitals are at risk, some of them hanging by a mere thread. And our congressman isn't doing anything to help, quite the opposite. He is voting for the things that harm our district. I was born and raised in Eastern Washington by people who were born and raised in Eastern Washington. I'm a third-generation union member. My grandfather was a cement worker on the Grand Coulee Dam. My dad worked for the railroad. My mom worked for Bob Bell. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I put my way through school, and then I moved home to Spokane County and became a deputy prosecuting attorney. In my 4 years there, I held violent offenders and people who sexually abused children accountable. I joined the State Department, and through 6 presidential administrations, I negotiated tough trade and national security issues across national, political, and religious boundaries. I'm prepared to take on Michael Baumgartner and do what this district needs as the one elected representative in the federal government whose primary job is to look after this district. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. And there will be time afterwards, if you want to get to know the candidates better, we should have time after we're done here to visit with them more after you've heard their answers to your questions. All right, so Capri has given me our stack of questions in the order of the things you guys wanted to hear about first.
Because I
So-
believe in ranked choice voting, so there we go.
There you go. Okay, so we'll give the mic to Bajan. So we'll kind of work our way along. Each question will go to the next person to start first. All right, so the first question is on corruption. The word of the day. What legislation would you propose to strengthen our constitutional institutions?
I think we need to go beyond just legislation. I want to make sure that we are couching these things correctly. Remember, whoever goes there, we are going to be a freshman congressional representative, which means the first thing we need to do is make friends, we need to be working with the leadership, and we need to make short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. The real corruption needs to be long-term. We need constitutional amendments. It needs to be literally illegal to pay off the president for pardons. Currently, I'm looking at an idea to require a 2/3 Senate confirmation for pardons. I am looking at constitutional amendments that will make it illegal for the president to have cryptocurrency because it is too easy for foreign governments and for US corporations to pay off a president. This one has proven the weaknesses in our Constitution. We've got to be looking at the access that is being paid for. Oh wow, we have 2 whole minutes? Oh, I can slow down. What we want to be doing is looking at the things that can be accomplished. So a lot of that for us freshmen is going to be what's driving in the House of Representatives. Because we only get so many pieces of legislation we're allowed to sponsor. But there's more than that. How about the phone? This phone weighs 500 pounds. You know how I know? Because Michael Baumgartner never picks it up. Call Secretary Schultz when they're going to can 130 people from the Forest Service. That's going to affect Colville. Call the Secretary Secretary of Veterans Affairs when they cut 135 jobs from the VA. Those are ideas to gut. So the corruption isn't necessarily direct all the time.
All right, do you need the question repeated?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
So, when I was in charge of our diplomatic post in Lahore, Pakistan, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came for a visit, and there was a round table with business owners at the governor's house. And the business owners gave her a hard time because the State Department had put out a travel warning that said that Pakistan was dangerous and people should consider very carefully whether they actually needed to go there or not. And the business owners said, "You're killing our economy with that sort of a travel warning." And she said, "Insurance companies will insure against war and terrorism and floods and act of God. What they will not insure against is what economists call regulatory risk." If you've got governors or chief executives who are setting prices for things, who are picking winners and losers in businesses instead of letting the market do the work, that means people can't afford to do business in your country. And that's exactly what was going on in Pakistan. And I had not imagined at the time that about 15 years later, that's what's going on in the United States of America, with the collusion of Congress, too many of whom are owned by corporate interests as well. So I have signed the Political Integrity Pledge, which says that I will work on passing legislation that prohibits Congress members from stock trading, that prohibits Congress members from taking dark PAC money or participating in dark PACs, the way that Michael Baumgartner is now. And I will also pledge right now that even though it's not the law, I will abide by that pledge in my own activities as a candidate, as well as after you've elected me to Congress. Thank you.
Let me just start out by saying, I want to acknowledge that we've got a lot of people in harm's way right now. And I want to thank all of the military members and their families for the sacrifices that they're making. That is pretty significant. We've got people that I care about in harm's way. And I use that as a segue to say, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank all of you for coming out. At the same time, the DoD, Department of Defense, actually has a fantastic set of rules that are extraordinarily restrictive on how it controls the ability to maintain integrity of our military. Those rules, I see no reason that we can't really largely adopt those for our members of Congress. That includes not taking more than $20 from what's called a prohibited source. That's basically somebody that contracts with the government. And for members of Congress, that's pretty much everybody. Why is it that our members of Congress can substantively take a lot of gifts? We have members of Congress that are invited on vacations. Why are they taking those? That doesn't make any sense to me. All of that needs to stop. I'm a huge fan of removing Congress's ability to participate in activities where they can personally profit. They shouldn't be able to make stock trades. I think all of their investments should be in a blind trust, period, end of. There's no reason they should be engaging in a capacity with an awareness of what that capacity, what that decision might be to cost them financially. They need to make decisions based off of the interests of here, what we're looking at here. And also, it's extraordinarily important to have these communications, to have dialogue with our district, to say, what do you see? What matters to you? Because what matters to you matters to me, or at least it should, because I do care. And if you see something that needs to be fixed, I am on it, and I'm going to be following it, because that is part of the job. So maintaining integrity of the position, of the office, of our Congress, of our elected leaders across the board needs to be paramount. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. Kevin, do you need me to repeat the question now?
Yeah, if you could, thank
Okay.
you.
What legislation would you propose to strengthen our constitutional institutions?
Two main things for this one. When I think of constitutional institutions, it's a lot of T's in those words, but other than those things, I think of upholding our democracy as it relates to voting in elections, because once we lose those things, then I don't think we are in much of a democracy. And so the two things that I would specifically propose around this are banning all gerrymandering nationally. That comes from the top. That means states don't legislate this anymore about their gerrymandered for political gain purposes. And so a lot of what we're seeing is gerrymandering actually means you have less than a vote when you're in these districts. The outcome of your election has been decided by an algorithm before you get to the polls. And so that would be one thing. And the other is a large getting corporate money out of politics. And the best way that I can see doing that, or at least reversing that direction, is by overturning Citizens United. And the way that we can do that from the congressional level is by packing the Supreme Court with 4 more justices to be at 13 and representative of the number of federal judicial districts that they are in this country. Because the Supreme Court has completely absolved itself of having any impartiality to our federal government. It's granted every one of Trump's wishes. And so we need to pack the court. We need to, and with those 13 justices, we will overturn Citizens United and make it so corporations can't continue to keep flowing unlimited money into PACs, into elections, and that the candidates that you see, the people that actually get represented and elected to Congress, have a much more likely chance that they will be representative to the people that they serve instead of corporations and lobbyists. Thank you.
Right on.
Great, thank you, Kevin. David?
So I have lived under the system that Richard described for the Department of Defense, and I think that is a good model. Not just for Congress, as he described, but for the executive branch and the judicial branch as well. There's one particular line we were taught as officers that not only were you to avoid a conflict of interest, but you were also supposed to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. And that's a really high standard, and it's a great one, and that's what we should expect from our government. So we will be freshmen, as Beja pointed out, to help counteract that, or to still get a little bit more oomph behind us. I've joined with a coalition of other candidates from across the country. There's over 120 of us now, and we have signed up to pledge to one another, if we're elected, we'll work on 5 things together. So if only half of us get elected, that's 60 freshmen walking in the door with a coalition already built to do some really important things. And those 5 things are to work on overturning Citizens United, get that dark money out. Speaking of dark money, I do want to point out that there is an independent candidate in this race who has taken money from a dark money PAC. And happy to talk more about that on the side if you wish. So, overturning Citizens United, prohibiting members of Congress from trading stocks, as others have mentioned, prohibiting members of Congress from becoming a lobbyist for 5 years after they leave office. Stop that revolving door right there. Creating a no-kidding, enforceable code of conduct for the Supreme Court, and reasonable term limits for Congress. Those 5 things. This group has many more ideas that are like-minded, but that's the 5 we signed up for right now.
All right, thank you very much. All right, if we could pass the mic to Carmela now. You get to start this one. All right, you ready? All right. What federal initiatives would you support to address the challenges to rural health care?
So 11 rural critical access hospitals in this congressional district, and some of them are better financial shape than others, but none of them are going to easily withstand the cuts to Medicaid that are coming. About $1 trillion in Medicaid spending is expected to be cut over the next 10 years, $100 billion a year. That's about what we're paying this year for the war on Iran so far. And it is insanity. And the critical access hospitals here in Eastern Washington, this is probably not a surprise to anybody in the room, rely more heavily on Medicaid payments than almost anybody else, almost any of the other hospitals do. Hospitals in Spokane aren't quite as dependent, but all the healthcare providers are running on very narrow margins. And what I've heard from hospital administrators across the district is that Medicaid payments are the most seamless, smoothest payments there are. They fill out paperwork, they turn it in, they get paid. It's even an easier system for them than private health insurance payments are, and so much easier than Medicare Advantage. And if any of you have signed up for that, I'm sorry, and I hope you're trying to get it back, but this is what we could be doing instead. We can stop before it gets really started, the Medicaid paperwork that is coming down the pike that Michael Baumgartner voted for. We can expand Medicaid access to children from birth to their 19th birthday. We can end Medicare Advantage and add vision, hearing, and dental to regular Medicare so that it actually covers our entire scope of need. And It would take a big majority to get that done, but I bet we could get it done. And every vote, even a freshman vote, counts just as much as everybody else's. Richard, do you want me to repeat the question? You got it.
No, I'm good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So let me just start with, I'm a proponent of Medicare for all. I also think that we need to make sure we have expanded Medicaid access. Over a third of the children in Stevens County are on Medicaid. When I told that to a group of conservative individuals last week, it was like I shocked them. They didn't realize that. We have a significant financial challenge here in Stevens County and in Eastern Washington. We have got to find a way, and we've actually talked about that over on the brochures. Both David Womack and I have talked about a lot of medical access and care issues and costs. One of the first things we can do is we can increase the reimbursement amounts that Medicaid and Medicare offer. Those are going to help provide some level of offset. That offset that right now they're taking costs that they are not being reimbursed for. That's not acceptable. Medicare and Medicaid need to be reimbursing an actual cost associated with the services that they're providing. We also need to make sure that when our federal government is negotiating on prescription drug prices, that those drug prices are actually available to everybody. Like, our federal government needs to be able to negotiate everything. Right now it's limited. We can actually bring down costs associated with our healthcare system in providing prescription drugs access by making sure that our federal government negotiates the prices, brings it down, has a bargaining associated with it, such that our people have access to those prices. And there's no reason that we should have limitations on what that looks like, because right now it is limited. Additionally, an additional point of contention is that right now access to care is also limited by the providers. We don't have enough providers. We have got to increase the numbers of providers that we have: physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, doctors. You cannot be waiting 3 to 6 months for a specialty care appointment. We have got to get that pipeline streamlined such that we're getting more providers to the people, which will drop down the cost. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Kevin?
Yeah, totally agree with a lot of great ideas that have been said. I'm also a proponent of Medicare for all, and I believe that it is one of the most streamlined, it's sort of my policy North Star in the healthcare, because I believe that healthcare is a human right. And right now we are seeing the consequences of a for-profit healthcare industry, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's insurance. Every step of the way, it feels like we're being squeezed, and that none of these processes are actually seamless. They're more difficult for both the patient and the provider. And so, yes to Medicare for all, but it's going to take a while to build that coalition, to whether it's the House, Senate, and presidential, that's probably needed to pass this. So in the meantime, absolutely Medicaid expansion and restoring some of the cuts to job requirements that were made within the last year on the Big Beautiful Bill, because these Medicaid revenues represent such a significant portion for our rural hospitals. And then I would also support restoring Affordable Care Act subsidies directly to the healthcare premiums themselves. What we're seeing statewide is that year over year, we're looking at about 30% declines in enrollment for health insurance in general. And those are the healthy people. I mean, I have knee issues, but I'd like to consider myself healthy, and I can't afford to pay $500 a month for the worst health insurance that gets me a $9,000 deductible. And so if we continue along this path, the healthiest will continue to drop out of our private insurance pools, and we'll only be left with those, and all of us will be saddled with that cost. And so that's why I think we need socialized medicine and Medicare for all in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. David?
Well, as a lifelong healthcare administrator, I could talk all day about this. So could you please repeat the question so I hone in on this?
Oh, go crazy. What federal initiatives would you support to address the challenges to rural healthcare?
Okay, to rural healthcare. As Carmela pointed out, most of the rural hospitals are critical access hospitals here. So they're reimbursed at 101% of their cost for Medicare. Tell me a business that can survive on a 1% margin. That's just Medicare. Medicaid reimburses less. So there's commercial insurance where they have to make up the rest of that, and that gets spread amongst everybody who has employer-sponsored insurance, so it's a hidden tax, just so you know that right there. We could greatly stabilize the rural hospitals by increasing that 101% to about 103, 104% would make a huge difference right there. Of course, repealing the bureaucratic barriers that have been put into Medicaid, we can do that relatively quickly, and restoring the Affordable Care Act subsidies that have been taken away. The figures are 30% of this entire district is on Medicaid, 50% of children. So it's actually worse than the figures that were quoted for just Stephens County, for the entire district. When you take that many people out of the system, the hospitals can't survive. So that's just the short term. In the longer term, yes, we could move towards a single payer system like Medicare for all. I've worked in a single payer system. That's what it was in the military. So we were concerned about people's health and keeping them flying. We were not concerned about insurance companies. I had 0 billing clerks. First hospital I went to after I left the Air Force, I had more billing clerks than I had physicians. Okay? Yeah. So, and there's my timer. I just got through the short term. As Beijing keeps talking about short term, medium, and long term. Please come talk to me about the medium and the long term, because I've got those plans too. And there is a light at this end of the tunnel in 28 if we keep building.
Okay, David.
Okay. All right, Beijing.
I want to focus on what's really causing our biggest problems right at the moment. And that is, we have to unspool the time bombs in the big beautiful bill. The rural hospital funding is going to be cut off in 2027. But folks don't learn until they touch a hot stove a lot of times. And they're not going to learn until it goes away. What are the consequences of that? The hospital in Dayton is Dayton's largest employer. It's not just about not having health care available. It's having 300 plus fine jobs go away. The entire economy will be drying up down in Dayton if this is allowed to pass. Another thing that has been discussed here is that we talk about Medicaid. That's another one that the Republicans threw in because it's kettle logic. The idea is if you just blast everything, they will lose the details. So we have an opportunity to unspool these one at a time. If we try to go in and do everything, we will fail. So let's look at those things for our healthcare, because in this district, as Carmela pointed out, 11 rural hospitals. What about Pomeroy? What about Chewelah? What about our own hospital here? We've got to be looking at providing care where it's at. And I want to touch on something, the VA. 10% of the population here are veterans. Our healthcare at the VA is getting gutted by Secretary Collins, who, believe it or not, is a chaplain. Gutting healthcare from his fellow soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. He should be ashamed of himself.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, you've already got it, cool. Okay, good job.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is on climate change. What is your plan to address the impacts we experience up here due to climate change, i.e. the wildfire smoke, the extreme heat, the having to stay in the house with no air conditioning because of the wildfire smoke and extreme heat, and no snowpack?
In 2 minutes. All right. Okay, so solving significant problems in 2 minutes. That said, I'll try to hit some big points, and certainly please come and talk with me afterward. I'd love to talk about it further. Let me just start with, Washington State actually has a national strategy to address fire problems and fire issues. that is not fully funded. It's only about 40% funded. There's no reason that that full program should not be or could not be funded federally. It has national impacts. That's a national problem. There's no reason that we can't engage on that and get that done. Again, the plan is for 20 years. I think we can do a lot better than that. So just opening up and actually addressing that off of the bat. Trying to address urgent issues. Right now, as it sits, we have, the Washington Air National Guard provides multiple fire crews to provide firefighting support. They have multiple response agencies to provide assistance for disaster response. That is all helpful, but for example, FEMA has been gutted. They don't have the funding to provide the support necessarily that our people are going to need. This is just the urgent short term that was referenced earlier, because we have midterms and long terms that need to be addressed. But the short term, we need to be able to put the fires out, we need to be able to get the disaster response into place, and we need to be able to get the funding to our people to help them through these crises. That is just to start with. Then we're going to move on to making sure that we have a proper renewable energy resources. That renewable energy resource is going to be extraordinarily important to make sure that we are getting away from fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels, I'm talking too fast, fossil fuels they're already more expensive, but we need to expedite that process in a much better fashion. For example, we are out of time, so please come and talk with me, and I'd love to talk with you more. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So as I mentioned, my background is in climate change and sustainability. And as I studied it in college, I know the science. And I know that we're also on the front end of it. And that unfortunately, when it comes to wildfire smoke, when it comes to heat waves, when it comes to our snowpack, those are global issues. It's the amount of carbon that we're putting into the atmosphere from the fossil fuels that we're burning in our modern economy. And so I think the Biden administration took great steps to decarbonize our national economy, manufacturing electric vehicles, both creating manufacturing jobs and reducing our carbon emissions, creating more green energy that is carbon free and provides local jobs as well. Then I want to, yes, those are global impacts, and I believe creating some form of Green New Deal investment will allow also our workforce to grow into those things where we're having significant workforce challenges in my generation. And a lot of folks here know that homeowners insurance is probably skyrocketing. Sometimes it can go up 5 to 10-fold year over year because some algorithm at a national insurance company decides that you're in an at-risk wildfire zone. And so that requires both state and federal coordination. The state needs to step in and manage, state and feds need to manage the lands around our forests to actually have strong forest health, so there's reduced wildfire risk. But then the federal government needs to hold our insurance companies accountable and say that you cannot just cut people off and are left without home insurance. And so we need the federal government to step in when insurance companies do try to make these cuts. And in general, we need to significantly invest in both our rural and urban ability to decarbonize our economy, because our snowpack might not come back based on the direction that we're going. Thank you.
That's bleak. Thank you. David, go ahead.
So for the short term, we could take a look at what's been taken away in the last 18 months and reinstall it. I mean, that's so many federal agencies have been decimated, and that's our first step to go back in the short term. In the longer term, I agree that we need to be moving much more aggressively towards green energy. We need to wean ourselves off of oil as expeditiously as we can without harming our economy too bad. And think of the other benefits that would have beyond the climate. Imagine all the wars that have been fought over oil. Imagine if we just didn't have that problem anymore. It would be just remarkable. Kevin brought up the issue of fire insurance, which I know many of you are facing right now. And I think it's probably time that the federal government looked at treating fire insurance like flood insurance. for certain areas and backed you people up with that. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. Bajan?
You know, you're going to find pretty much everybody up here in violent agreement about what we want to do about climate change. I want to go into a couple of things about what we're going to do to spread the message. I mean, first thing, the first step in the problem-solving process is to officers, identify the problem. Leadership. Leadership is the process of influencing others to accomplish the mission by providing purpose, direction, and motivation. Let me identify a problem. I was down in beautiful Garfield County, and I happened to have run across the chair of the Republican Party down there, who informed me that the greatest detriment to their way of life, to farming, and to the American way is windmills. I suspect she just had finished another reading of Don Quixote, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. However, I am proposing that while we have legislative priorities, we provide that leadership. We go to the people here that literally do not believe that there's such thing as climate change and start having discussions with them. We go to the people like the chair of the Republican Party down there, and it's not going to be a first time. These are not people where logic matters. We're going to have to go and build relationships with them. How about we also build relationships with our elected Republican officials that do have lines of communication and that are not nuts? There's a few. But we can do that to work with the people so that they at least believe in reality.
Okay, thank you, Carmela.
So I agree with David. One of the things we could do would be to reinstate the funding that was available under the Infrastructure Act to put in sustainable equipment so that farms and other small businesses can innovate and use much more efficient and solar power and wind power and other technological innovations that were developed here in the United States but are currently under attack by this administration. The other thing that we could do is, with the power of the purse, is to defund the parts of Homeland Security that are currently terrorizing elements of our communities because they don't have their paperwork in order or their paperwork is pending, and shift that to FEMA so that anything that's not needed to secure the borders in the ports could instead be given to FEMA so that it can help people who are dealing with climate change, whether it's forest fires or floods or hurricanes or whatever it is, so that people have a better chance of surviving a natural disaster and being able to rebuild their homes and businesses when it's done and build back in a more sustainable way. I've spoken to bankers who've told me that they've got a lot of their rural folks who needed emergency loans to get reimbursed for the solar panels and the battery systems that they had installed on their farms. And we should also go ahead and impeach the political appointees who participated in taking sustainable energy offline and paid money to destroy projects that would have moved us in the right direction.
All right, thank you. All right, Kevin, you get to start this one. This one's on data centers. How do you feel about data centers? Tell us, especially in rural areas.
It's a spicy one. So I recently announced that one of my policy priorities, if I was to get elected to Congress, would be to pass a national moratorium on data center construction, specifically large capacity data centers. And that's informed by, frankly, a lot of trial and error in a lot of these communities around the country, that especially rural communities that can be easily swayed by larger corporations, where county commissioners, city councils can come in. It looks like an opportunity for a multi-trillion-dollar corporation to come in and overpower local communities, use their energy, their water, and at the end of the day, once that infrastructure is built, they'll have a promise of jobs, they'll have a promise of making sure the water system's closed loop so it'll be more efficient, making sure their energy is generated from clean energy. But a lot of times, what ends up happening is none of that comes to fruition. As costs get cut, there's no legal binding agreement that says they have to do it the right way. So they do it how corporations have always invested in communities before, and that's what the local community is suffering. And so when Meta, when Google, when Amazon are making these significant investments, and all of the local communities still come out in opposition to them, then I've seen enough. Then I think we need to take a pause, that if we're gonna build these pieces of infrastructure, we have to determine a great reason why, and if they are gonna be built, they need to be truly held to the highest of standards to protect local ratepayers from rate increases and any local water resources that these companies want to use. Also, since I have 15 seconds, my climate thing. Yes, it's doomerism, but the UN just removed the worst emissions case scenario from their likely playbook, which means that the investments that we make can make a difference at the end of the day. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I feel better now.
I just don't want to scare you.
All right, David?
Well, I also support a moratorium on building new data center starts until the federal government gets its act together on regulating it. And in fact, that legislation has already been written and introduced in both the Senate and the House. So we just need the votes, and Michael Baumgartner's not going to vote for it. So we just need the votes to put that in place. I will point out that Michael Baumgartner has already proposed legislation of his own about data centers. He proposes that corporations be encouraged, notice the word, not mandated, encouraged to pay their own way for electricity and to use reusable water sources. Encouraged. And how's he going to encourage them? Tax breaks. Right? Yeah, oh goodness, exactly. So I would support that legislation for the moratorium, and what that legislation should look like after the moratorium is a federal framework of what issues should be addressed in any sort of data planning, any sort of approvals, and then the state and local governments should have their say as well. Just if it checks the federal boxes does not mean that it's going to be built in a local community. We should keep that power as close to the people as possible.
All right, thank you, David. Bajan, your turn.
Before there was a cyber command, I was working cyber warfare for a defense intelligence agency. I want to put something to bed right away. We are not stopping data centers. You are not going to stop AI. That's a pipe dream. Another thing is, it's not a good idea because they will build them in China, in India, in less friendly places than that as well. And then we have a national security issue because all of our data will be going there. If you've been wondering who's draining your bank accounts, it's places like Russia. You want your data center there? No. Or China? So I want to put that right there on the table. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to regulation. And we need to be looking at where the actual problems lies. Anybody familiar with our cryptocurrency place out there in Usk? Right? That went from a sawmill of 150 jobs that they promised they would bring. And how many jobs did they create? 47. So it wasn't the panacea that they were promised. Would you like another problem to identify? The port of Walla Walla, not rented land to Jeff Bezos. They sold public land without any hearing to Jeff Bezos for data centers down in Walla Walla. That sound like good policy to you? Those are the sort of things we need to look. What I am proposing to start is that the United States House of Representatives needs a standing committee on AI. They are currently getting through by playing a dodgeball game on the existing committees in the House to get what they want out of it. With the Standing Committee on AI, it will handle all issues: military, security, economics, environmental, water, all of those issues where they have one-stop shopping and they can't BS their way through it.
All right, thank you. Carmela?
I'm going to respectfully disagree with a couple of my fellow candidates up here. I think that our job for the next 2 years in Congress is going to be to keep the federal government out of the way of states protecting their own people. What we've seen now in the fields of antitrust, in terms of data centers, in terms of corporate influence and corruption, is states' attorneys general stepping up and protecting the people in their own territories from the federal government and from corporate corruption. And so, I mean, just this week, Nick Brown, Washington State's Attorney General, joined, I think, 20 other attorneys general in suing to stop the Warner Brothers Paramount consolidation. And I think that's really important for them to be able to continue to do that. So I would fight to make sure that the most local level of government, whether it's municipal or county or state, is empowered to go ahead and do what they need to do to go to court to protect their people, while the executive branch of the federal government is as thoroughly corrupted as it is. Because right now, the real champions of democracy, in addition to folks like yourselves who are out demonstrating and writing your congressman and showing up for protests, is the local officials we've elected to protect us and to help us get through. And we've got to continue to let that state level and individual level lawsuits go forward to protect us from that until we can get a better executive.
Thanks, Carmela. Richard?
I strongly believe the path forward is a national strategy to addressing issues with data centers. Historically, the last few years, it has been a hands-off approach. And the reason why it's been a hands-off approach is because this government is afraid of falling behind other governments in terms of how technology is advancing, because it's advancing so fast. That said, people first. We need to take care of people first, and that is going to include it needs to include a national strategy on how we address data centers, setting a floor by which data centers need to be able to maintain. That is going to be maintaining certain minimum levels of environmental standards, making sure that we're constantly tracking and monitoring information coming out of data centers with regards to environmental impacts, water, air, any sort of plumage in the ground, noise, light, certainly environmental impacts and encroachments around the surrounding areas. All of that needs to be addressed, and making sure that we're not going to have adverse impacts on the communities at a minimum, because it's not too difficult, as we saw in Utah, to bully local governments into submission. I think very strongly local governments need to be the ones that make those ultimate decisions, but that those decisions need to have a minimum floor standard. We are literally in an administration that is actively trying to engage in selling off federal lands at prices the regular person can't afford. Who is it going to? The highest bidder. Those are right now the data centers. We need to make sure that our lands are protected, our communities are protected by setting those floors to make sure that we are all protected. I don't want to get in the way of innovation. I don't want to stop progress, but we have to think of people first. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Richard. Okay, David, you get to start this one. This one is on accountability. How do you propose to remain accountable to your constituents here in Stevens County should you get elected?
Well, I'll keep coming up here and visiting you. So I've done a whole lot of that already. And my staff will be open to input from you, and I will certainly make sure that it's not as many canned letters as you get now from our current representative. So, for the last 9 months that I've been running for this office, I've been going to holding listening sessions all over this district. Everywhere from Clarkson over to Walla Walla, where I live, all the way north to Newport, several of them here, a whole bunch in Spokane. And I've heard what people have to say. And I've taken those and I've literally turned your priorities into my mission that I will work for in Congress. And those priorities, just so you know, they're not anything that would surprise you because they're things we live every day. People are looking for an economy that works for everybody. And when people talk about that, I mean one full-time job is enough to provide the basics of modern life: healthcare, housing, childcare, access to a secure retirement, transportation, groceries. People want a healthcare policy that covers everybody. They want healthcare workers to be prepared for the next generation. They want a return to science-based healthcare. People want support for agriculture and for public lands, and people want their rights and their safety protected. That will be my mission. That's what I'll be working on, and everything, all the input that people have given me, that's what I'm focused on, and that'll be the future too. As new issues arise, as I get those will become parts of my mission.
All right, thank you, David. Bajan?
You have two choices when you're a candidate. You can spend your time shaking down rich people for money, or you can actually go to voters, go to the neighborhood, go to the small towns, go to the big towns, and actually talk with people. That's what I've been doing. That's what I plan to continue doing. There are members of Congress that don't raise any money. More than one, by the way. Because what they do is they spend their time coming back and talking to their constituents. Also, you have to understand that we are not going to need to be lecturing them so much as listening to them. But that's not exactly right either. You can just sit there, but our job is not to just be a mirror and reflect what people think. Our job is to be the lens that focuses on the issues that matter. And sometimes you have to lead, which means when your constituents are wrong, you have to be willing to go to them and explain why you are doing what you are doing. And CYA, can you articulate? Because if you can't say what you mean, you will never mean what you say. Communication is information conveyed, information received, information confirmed. Some of these battles in our very conservative district are going to be long and enduring. But that's what we should be doing in a democratic republic. Several of us have a military background. I was enlisted for 17 years before I bumped my head and got a direct commission as an officer. There is a difference between leadership at the ground level and management.
All right, thanks, Bajan. Carmela?
So I'm thinking back to 2024 and listening to Michael Baumgartner tell people over and over and over again how much he loved Candidates for Us, how much he loved doing town halls, and how he would have an office in Colville and every place else. Anybody else remember that? He had one rowdy town hall in Spokane where people got understandably upset when he started lying to them, and he hasn't held a public town hall since then. I spent my career with the State Department doing things that I never imagined as a kid growing up in the Spokane Valley would be possible. And And my dad, who grew up in Chatteroy, told me once when we were on a trip together that if somebody had told him when he was a young man that he would be on a beach in Fiji drinking beer with his daughter, he would have thought they were smoking wacky tobacco. So I've had that time to travel the world and learn different ways of doing things, and I have loved being back home for the last 6 years. And people doing candidates the honor of sharing their hopes and dreams for themselves and their families and for our community and for our country is one of the best things I've ever had a chance to do. Michael Baumgartner's had about 12 weeks of paid leave over the last year because Mike Johnson doesn't want the Congress in session to take votes that he's not sure he's going to win. And what has Michael Baumgartner done? He spent that time in Munich, in Beijing, and Shanghai, and Delhi. I've been to those places. I'm not a pretend officer, I was an actual officer, and I'll spend my time here in the district as often as I can, because I've also been to DC. I'll spend as much time there as I have to, but I'll spend just as much time here as I can.
Thank you, Carmela. Go ahead, Richard.
This is my home. I've been here for a long time. I was born in Spokane. My family traveled around quite a bit when my dad was in the military. I like here. I like being here. I like these communications. I like these conversations. When my other family, my guard family, started suffering really bad during the government shutdown, they didn't have access to food. They couldn't pay their rent. They couldn't pay their mortgages. That was unacceptable. I looked every single day. I'm the JAG. I'm the one responsible for solving people's problems. I'm the one responsible for helping people. I looked every single day at Representative Baumgartner's schedule, and every day it was empty. And then one day I looked, and there was a meeting that was held the previous day. I checked it that morning. I checked it the previous morning. He was unreachable. That was absolutely unacceptable. There is no way a representative representing our community, our people, our families, our friends, our neighbors, this nation should be unreachable, especially in a time of crisis for our community. Every single day he should have been out there. Every single day he should have been having his people out there meeting with people, talking to people, providing with them solutions. That's exactly what my organization was doing. We literally started a food bank. That's what leaders do. They step up and they engage, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's something you don't. At the end of the day, we have got to be reachable. I will always be reachable, even if it's something where we disagree. We will always have a conversation. I will always be available all up and down the district. And we will have those activities. If I'm back in the district, expect to meet with me, or at least my friends. I'll expect to hopefully meet with you, because that's the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Kevin, go for it.
Accountability. And I've said it for a while, who I take money from is who I'm accountable to. And that's why I've set out from the beginning on this campaign to refuse corporate PAC money, both now and into the future if I become a representative. And we see the juxtaposition of what it's like when someone doesn't make that commitment, when someone does take corporate PAC money, when someone cares more about their lobbyists and fundraising dinners than the people that they serve. Michael Baumgartner hasn't shown up in community since that town hall where he got rightfully yelled at. He hasn't needed to. He believes this seat is safe. He's raising his money at small dinners where the political elite think they can decide the future of this district. But that's not how we can do things going forward. Because being accountable to each and every person in this district is my priority. And it's not just about, the accessibility, the communication both ways. It's also about fighting for the people of this district up on Capitol Hill. And I've said it before, and I think even tonight at the forum earlier, that District 5 kind of has a unique way of representing a lot of things about this nation in a microcosm. From Colville down to Clarkston, we have rural areas areas. We have farmers, foresters. We have an urban area with significant manufacturing and healthcare. And we have higher education. And so in a number of ways, the issues that many communities all throughout this region face are exactly what lawmakers on Capitol Hill need to hear. And so your representative should be going to them and fighting for both federal dollars to come back here and bipartisan legislation that actually helps people instead of passing the big, beautiful bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Okay, if we pass the mic back down here to Bacon. All right, so this one is about living in rural America. In rural areas, the health of the Postal Service is extremely important. What would you do to resolve the USPS financial crisis? Oh, take your time.
I did mention I live in a log cabin just down the road here, a little piece. I did have a neat conversation with the Valley Postmaster because it turns out he's a hard hat diver. And my union, we're dive tenders. So we had a little chat. But boy, when Trump brought in, what was his name, Roy?
Joy.
That old boy, you know, his point was to dismantle the post office and the Postal Service. What we can do in Congress is a little bit limited, I believe, but I'm certainly open to any ideas to make sure that we re-empower the Postal Service. What we in rural areas understand is that the privatization is a bad thing because we are not the profitable part of delivery services. So I will make sure that we are putting legislation together that guarantees that. Specifically, I don't know. That's why we have committees. That's why we will have people out there who are smarter than I am. But that is an excellent question. Whoever asked that question, thank you, because that is precisely the kind of thing about living in rural areas where we get overlooked. And we've got to be honest about it when we come back to our constituents and tell them things that they might not want to hear. Like, no, you do need a postal service. You do need delivery as close to your door as possible. And that, no, stamps are cheap. Seriously, they take something from your door, wherever it is, take it on trucks, planes, airplanes, all across the country and put it precisely at the door or box of whoever the hell you want to send it to for under $1. That's cheap.
Right, thanks, Bajan. Carmela.
The Postal Service is one of the framers' explicit jobs that it gave to the Congress. Article 1, I think Section 8 is where the explicit powers are, and it includes establishing a postal service. And that means that no matter where in the country you want a #1 stamp, first class stamp to take your stuff, it goes there. And it doesn't matter whether it's down the block or up in Alaska or down in Hawaii, and that is under attack. And the reason that the Postal Service was put in the hands of Congress is because the founders understood that communication was essential to binding our nation together. And prior to that, each of the states had their own stamp system and postal system, and it was an absolute nightmare. So until Louis DeJoy came along, until the first Trump administration, the Postal Service was pretty much doing what it was supposed to do, as our founders intended. And Michael Baumgartner has posted, last time I checked his Twitter account, he had pinned that he had proudly signed off on the so-called Save America Act. And among the conditions of that would be to limit, very severely, voting by mail. And we've seen the Trump administration take a number of stabs at figuring out ways to keep people from being able to turn their ballots in by mail, to make those ballots not count if they don't arrive on time, to make it more difficult to get an accurate post date for when you submitted your letter, your ballot to the post office. And it is essential that Congress take that power back and insist that the Postmaster General do the job that Congress demands they do. And in the meantime, make sure to vote early, not often, but early. And if you're gonna get it in the mail, get it in at least a week in advance of August 4th. Thank you.
Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, so the problem really originated with Congress. And it was an attempt by Republicans to bankrupt the U.S. Postal Service and drive toward privatization. What happened was the U.S. Postal Service had a retirement program. And the retirement program had a cost to it. And they weren't originally budgeted for that. They weren't responsible for that. That was going to be on the federal side to pay for that. Congress passed a law handing the U.S. Postal Service billions of dollars of debt that they were responsible to pay without ever giving them actual time to prepare for that expense. It was completely unfair and everybody celebrated it even though they knew that it was going to bankrupt the U.S. Postal Service. It made absolutely no sense. We are dealing with that law today. That is one of the reasons, actually the major reason, why our U.S. Postal Service has a problem with funding right now. Because Congress keeps saying, you owe us money because you're not covering your costs. That's because they were handed a multi-billion-dollar debt for no reason. That was never part of the original plan. And yes, it is. The U.S. Postal Service is constitutionally protected. And I believe that that constitutional protection should continue on to enable every single person to have access to postal services. I think the best path forward is for Congress to say, you know what, we screwed this up. Let's reabsorb this debt we unfairly placed on you. If we're going to say that the U.S. Postal Service is responsible for producing the funds to pay for their pensions that the Congress mandated, then Congress needs to provide the U.S. Postal Service with the means by which to address it, which they never did. So that's why you keep on seeing this raise up in stamps, raise up in costs, raise up in shipping, because they're trying to cover that cost that they were never really structurally built to absorb. But that said, it should continue on. It should not be privatized, and I would make sure that I protect it. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Go ahead, Kevin.
Honestly, that was a pretty good history lesson. I learned some things there, so that was great. Hopefully you did too. That was awesome. I think especially around the privatization is a huge concern, and Louis DeJoy set out to do so explicitly. That they wanted to run the Postal Service like a business, even though for the most part it was fine before then, but sort of justifying these business-like ethics to create cuts to services that could then be privatized and I'm beating a drum here, but getting corporate money out of politics is a must if we want to exclude these conflicts of interest between someone doing their job and serving the people or serving FedEx and UPS that want another slice of the pie to their delivery area. And so I think that's a huge part that we need to address is just the prevalence of corporate money in politics and buying politicians out so they serve corporations before people. Also, just as an idea for potential service savings for the Postal Service, they had started a pilot under the Biden administration to start rolling out electric vehicles that have about operating costs of about 30 to 40% of an internal combustion engine. So significant cost savings opportunity. Not shockingly, that was scrapped under the Trump 2.0. And so would totally support more programs that allow the Postal Service to actually modernize, provide air conditioning for their drivers so they're not suffering in the heat, and to go into the 21st century with a vehicle fleet that is actually cheaper to run than their gas vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. David, go for it.
So I have to thank Richard too for the lesson there. And I remember that same lesson from the military several years ago where all of a sudden the retirement debt problem was placed back on the military, and it was a huge burden for the military to try and deal with that. I didn't realize that it happened as well with the Postal Service. So, and Carmela points out about Congress taking back its responsibility for its duties to look out for those things that are constitutionally mandated. And we can say that about so many things. And I agree 100% with that, and that's where we need to go.
Okay, so now it's back to Carmela. All right, thank you for those answers. All right, the next category is financial reform. And Carmela, what are your thoughts about campaign finance reform?
I think we covered this, did we not? Did we not?
Do you
So
guys,
do you guys
do you
feel like
guys
you
feel
already
you
did?
covered it? Because I feel like some have covered parts of it and others haven't as well. So use your time as you see fit. You do not need to use a full 2 minutes for this if you feel like you answered this.
Okay, so could I get it one more time to make sure that I've got the nuance of it, please, Lisa?
Well, this is just, what are your thoughts about campaign finance reform?
I'm in favor of it. So, there's a lot, but again, do look up if you're on social media. There's something called the Political Integrity Pledge. There are a number of different organizations that talk about the things that we spoke about earlier about stopping stock trading by Congress members, ending Citizens United, putting something back in that looked like the McCain-Feinstein Act that was overturned by Citizens United. There's a lot that we can do, but the main thrust is current dark money systems, including, as was it David who pointed out, but Kevin's also got a video out there. There is a candidate in this race who's taking dark money and who's going around saying, but Democrats and Republicans are all dirty. Like, dude, you and the incumbent are the only one taking dark path money. Get out of the road. So anyway, I'm in favor of campaign finance reform and making sure that we are responsible to the people who elect us, which should be the people who live in our district.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
All right, so Citizens United was pretty catastrophic for our country, and it just got put on steroids on June 30th when it was expanded to allow campaigns to coordinate with PAC, it was called political action committees. The only path forward to address a lot of that is going to be either a constitutional amendment or some modification to our Supreme Court. One of the things that has not been raised up, which is not often talked about, is the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court actually has been expanded beyond so the Constitution actually lays out what the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is. It's not everything. We give them everything. As Congress, they pass laws to what's called conferred jurisdiction to them. Okay? Congress can pull that back. We can start limiting significantly the impacts of the jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court if we so choose. This is a balance of powers issue. The Supreme Court, in my opinion, has gone kind of rogue, and they're really going outside the path of what is historical precedent as dictated by the Constitution and previous decisions by the Supreme Court. Well, that Congress can do is say, fine, we're going to cut your jurisdiction to the minimum limits required by the Constitution. You don't get to review things anymore like you used to. We can directly impact how and what they say and what they do. That's just an idea. But that might send a message to them if we're talking about that. They might want to rethink their approach to a lot of different issues, because right now they think that they're untouchable. That might be something I would be interested in, because I'm absolutely interested in doing that. So, which is why I bring it up. And I'm running out of time, so if you want to talk more about that, please come and talk with me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richard. Tell us what you really feel. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think you should have a pretty good idea about where I stand on campaign finance at this point. I've also taken the Political Integrity Pledge as well, and encourage you all to look up what that does and what that entails. I think, as we've mentioned about some of these pledges that we can take as candidates heading into Congress, it's really, it's a form of coalition building as well, to let others know, to signal to others in Congress that there's a new wave of people that are doing politics differently. And, since I don't need the full 2 minutes, I'll use this for a fun fact. So, in the first quarter of this year, Donald Trump traded more money in stocks than the entire Congress in 2025. I think we need some reform.
Period.
Does that surprise you?
Thank you, and thank you for reminding us about that, Kevin, that horrible fact that we have in our lives now. Go ahead, David.
He keeps her real.
So we've already talked a lot about Citizens United. I mean, corporations are not people. I don't believe they have free speech rights, and free speech is not money. It's crazy to me. Richard points out that Congress has the ability to limit the Supreme Court, and in fact, Congress can legislate, Congress can create courts and create what their jurisdiction is, what they focus on. So there's a lot of doors that starts to open up when you think about it, and that is certainly one of those powers that Congress just does not exercise. Campaign finance reform. You know, right now, with a PAC and dark money, you can't see where that money is coming from. And that's the main problem with it right there. You know, as an individual, if you want to give a donation to me, you're limited to $3,500. So, just so you know, that's your limit. $3,500 for this election cycle, and after I win the primary, you can give me another $3,500. But I have to collect from you, you know, your name, your address, your occupation, and your employer. But if it's laundered through a PAC, none of that counts. So if we're going to still have PACs, we could at least legislate and demand that type of information be collected. And that would go a long way right there to solving some of the problem. So just another idea to throw in with all the others on campaign finance reform.
All right, thank you, David. Bajan?
Once again, violent agreement. I want to get some new ideas circulating around here, because we are not, we're addressing this as if we're going to go with the solutions for our problems as we always have. I want to give some other ideas. Anyone know which countries in the world are pretty much universally recognized as the least corrupt? Scandinavian countries. Did you know any one of you can give an unlimited amount of money to any candidate in Denmark? There is no prohibition, even though you're a foreigner. Why doesn't that happen? Because their system is not designed like ours. The electoral industrial complex in this country is designed to take your money, launder it through our campaigns, and put it in the bank accounts of consultants. Do you wonder why people are sending millions and millions of dollars to somebody who's challenging senators who are never going to get voted out? It's because there's money in it. In Denmark, if you want to get on the ballot, you, the candidate, you can't hire somebody, you cannot send a volunteer. You as the candidate have to go to members of your party to get signatures from them to get on the ballot. You cannot buy television. You cannot buy radio. You cannot buy online. That is all provided to every candidate who is a member of a party. They don't have the corruption issues there because the opportunity isn't given to them. Let's start looking for some more creative approaches. If you want to take the money out of it, you have to take the incentive out of it.
All right, thank you, Bajan. Okay, Richard, you get to start this next one. All right, this one is on childcare. We are in a childcare desert up here. What policies would you introduce to protect and support families in Stevens County?
So I suspect every parent knows that childcare is ridiculously expensive and completely unaffordable for most people. That's why a lot of times one parent will stay home and take care of their kids. Very candidly, that's what I did with my family. My wife stayed home and took care of my two kids while they were younger until they finally aged out of childcare age. I think we were spending about $2,000 a month for two kids, and that we consider that relatively reasonable at the time. Now, granted, they've aged up and costs have gone up. Bottom line is childcare is unaffordable, and it's unreasonable to expect everybody to have the cost that we have here that we deal with. New Mexico has piloted a program to allow for additional coverage for childcare for their citizenry, and I don't know why we wouldn't want to consider that here. It looks like it's been well researched and it's got a good program. I don't see why we can't extend that similar process here to be successful, especially when we really need to start focusing a lot on early childhood education. That is lacking dramatically from what we have available to us. We need to have preschools. We need to have teachers in preschools. We really need to start early and really credential our childcare providers in a way that's going to help educate our population. For example, in Scandinavia, I have example Denmark, they don't even have childhood education until they're 1 year old. And the reason why is because it's expected that parents will stay at home with the kids. Each parent gets 6 months off. It's expected they're going to stay at home and take care of the kids, and then at 1 year old, they're going to be moving on into a system that is specifically designed to educate their children. I don't see why we can't borrow from the successes of other countries, other states, and apply that here. I don't have a problem with subsidies. I don't have a problem with child care assistance. So I would say, I'm a big you're going to find I'm a big A to B person. I don't care how we get there, I just care that we get there. Because right now as it is, it's not working for us, and we need to find a path forward. So I think those are good possible solutions. I'm open to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
So, 2 weeks ago, I got married.
Congrats.
Thank you. I was definitely going to hold for that applause if you didn't give it for me. Full transparency. And, we're kind of in the time of our lives where we start talking about next steps. And obviously, we've had the conversations before, but you look at, and we start to look at costs. We had one of our friends who's a few years older than us. She just had her second kid, and she had to quit her job because they couldn't afford childcare for two. And it was, they would have more, money at the end of the day if she stayed home. But that's less take-home pay in general. That's less money for our young working families at the same time that we are trying to invigorate the economy and get people starting working again. And so, specifically in Stevens County, I think it's, from everything that I've heard, it's become prohibitively difficult to run a childcare industry, to run a childcare clinic, because of not only employee costs, but the regulatory hurdles that our state places to try to get benefits afforded to some families within that care. And then it just creates, again, a nightmare for hoops to jump through. And so nationally, I support a paid family and medical leave like we have at our state level. And then we should have a universal childcare option that's available to every family if they want it. Because right now, it's our future. Whether it's young working class families or the kids themselves, this is an investment in our future. And the younger that we put kids into safe, structured environments, the better our future will be for all of us. And so I strongly support universal childcare, and I think it would go a long way in this district.
All right, thank you. David?
At the meet and greet we had right before this, I was called a communist for talking about universal health care. I guess that term's come back into vogue the last few weeks from above.
Welcome to Stevens County.
First time in 9 months, by the way, I've been called a communist. The concern from the individual was who's going to pay for it. Well, in healthcare, it's pretty easy to. I get that one. We're already paying for it. It's just a bunch of hidden costs, and it's going into the pockets of insurance executives. Childcare's a little bit different when it comes to that. I think the key really there is, yeah, we know the issues, we know the problems, we know what we would love to have, but how would we pay for universal childcare?
Tax the rich.
Tax the rich. Okay, other ideas. Tax the rich. So the New Mexico experiment, that's coming out of a trust fund that they set up from oil and gas leases. Okay? Yeah, they set that up. That's what Norway did, and that's how they fund practically all their social safety network. oil and gas leases out of the North Sea. That's why Alaskans get a check because of the pipeline, right? Because it's part of their things. So there is a proposal for a sovereign wealth fund for all of America on the AI companies. Because why? They're monetizing all human knowledge, which we all contributed to. We already own that. They're just extracting the wealth from it and not sharing it with us. It's like extracting wealth from workers and not sharing it with them. What about a sovereign wealth fund? There you go.
All right. Thank you,
And I'll
David.
talk to you more about it.
All right, thank you. Bajan.
This is sarcasm. So we'll fund childcare with data centers? No. Look, this is not a rural problem. I was speaking with Norma Hernandez. She is the mayor of College Place. The city of College Place has a total of 0 child development centers. The ones that they had couldn't meet the regulations for the state of Washington and were shut down. My first wife majored in early childhood education and managed multiple centers. Some were not-for-profit, some were connected to schools, some were private sector. But taking care of our children, is there something more important? I would venture to say there is nothing more important. And I get the opportunity cost thing a lot. In fact, I just got a text message from somebody who's mad because I'm saying I'm not going to cut the military budget and we have to take the military budget. That's a false dilemma. We can pay for both. We can pay for these things, but you can't pay for it when you have a huge percentage of the money that comes into this country just sticking into the pockets of the wealthiest individuals, who, by the way, profit and benefit the most from all the services that we provide. When was the last time the Department of Commerce did something for you? When was the last time the United States Navy protected trade that came to you in Colville? These people benefit most from our government. That's why they should pay more, not simply because they're rich.
All right, thanks, Bajan. Carmela.
We have had universal child care, and that was back during World War II when we needed the entire adult population mobilized to build out the biggest industrial expansion in world history in order to go fight fascists in Europe and in Asia. And we could do that again. It is a choice. One of the things that we could do would be to raise the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, so that everybody in the country is paid enough by their employer so that they can pay for the things that they need, including, if that's what they need, childcare. And right now, and Stevens County's got a little bit of a buffer between Washington State and the Idaho state line, but one of the issues across our district, or up and down the eastern edge of our district, is companies playing Washington State and Idaho off against each other, whether it's with building codes or state minimum wage or health and safety standards or whatever else. And raising the federal minimum wage would give everybody a better grip on what they need in their lives, and it would ensure that corporations do pay their workers what they're worth, and that they don't privatize the profits and then expect the rest of us to pay what it costs to live in this economy today, which is what's happening now, especially in Washington State, because we have a regressive tax system. Federal taxes could be based on income. They should be progressive. They were during what most people consider the golden age of the United States in the 50s and 60s. And we can go back there again. It's a matter of Congress taking its power back.
All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, Kevin, you get this one first. So this one is on agriculture. Do you have a vision to encourage those in farming to stay and to attract new people to farming?
I think, I'm going to take this a little bit from the climate perspective. Shocker, I know. But in many ways, there's a significant call and a desire for people under 40 years old to have meaning in the work that they do. And I find that a lot of times working with your hands does provide meaning in some ways. And so, I think opening up an opportunity and federal investment into our farms is a great idea. But we also need to look at the how many family farms are closing at an alarming rate over the last decade here in Washington State. And it's something like, even just in our district, it's about hundreds per year of family farms. And in my opinion, a big portion of that is because a lot of the federal subsidies that come through the farm bill that's passed go straight to large corporate farms. And very little benefits actually, shockingly, trickle down to smaller family farms. And so I think there's great programs that I've seen that were recently cut, like USDA's Farm to Schools programs and some other USDA programs that fund local, smaller producers to keep that food chain here locally, to provide food for schools, retirement centers, and to also provide employment for people that are interested in it. And throughout this district, we're also facing an upcoming crisis, potentially with drought, with our soil health crisis and the depletion of nutrients. And so we should also be looking at incentivizing regenerative agriculture and practices that aren't just depleting the resources in the soil, and getting young folks engaged in doing that work as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. David?
I'm sure it's no surprise to anybody in this room today, if you want to become a farmer, it's darn near impossible unless you inherit a farm or you start with a small boutique farm. And we can work with that. One of the first things we need to do is make sure that farming is profitable for our farmers. I mean, who wants to go into a business where they're not going to make money or actually lose money year over years? And that starts with creating trade agreements that are long-term and stable and are not at the whim of one man. Congress needs to take back the authority over tariffs. That's where it belongs in Article 1 of the Constitution, and Congress has ceded that to the administration. We also need to continue to invest in crop and climate research. We did some of the world-class research there at WSU, and that has been starved and stripped out over the last 18 months. So we need to reinvest there. We can also provide low-interest loans to farmers starting out so they can get started. New farmer programs, that would help a lot with those new farmers going as well. And then just all of us as people making sure that that we respect our farmers and actually everybody along the food chain, the supply chain that supplies us as well. And I think a good help would be to reduce the consolidation that's gone on with not just the corporate farms, but also with the processors, such as the meat processors. That there's about 4 of them that control all meat processing right now.
All right, thank you, David. Invasion?
Anybody know how to make a small fortune in agriculture?
Start with the big one.
Start with a large fortune. My family had a small farm in Petaluma, and One of the interesting things that started evolving few decades ago is community supported agriculture. It's a fantastic opportunity for small farms to provide boutique foods and boutique service to a community. And we have to promote that. But as terrible as we like to say big ag is, and we're saying big ag, what is our definition of that? Is it the 10,000 acre wheat farms down in the Palouse? Not necessarily. Even though they are incorporated, most of them are family owned, right? That doesn't make them a corporate farm. But there are some few basic things that you gotta do. One is you pass a damn farm bill regularly and on time. A farm bill is not designed to be a handout to farmers. It is designed to make sure that we are keeping up with market forces because those change. So farmers can be competitive. Water use. An acre foot of water needs to be divvied up so that it benefits farmers. But again, family farms need to have an opportunity. I'm not going to go into everything because we don't have time and I'm getting down to the 15-second death knell. But in California, they passed a law that said you had to have 400 acres, 410 acres was the number, or less, to be eligible for a lower price for an acre foot of water. So the corporate farms changed all of their properties to little designations to 409 acres. We got to be a little smarter than that.
Thank you. Carmela.
So I agree, a farm bill, a 5-year farm bill is the expectation. That's what the Congress has been able to do for a very long time, but hasn't passed one since 2018. So the tariff chaos has got to end. The labor chaos in the form of the immigration crackdowns terrorizing people in our communities has also got to end. Because it's one thing for a dryland wheat farm to get by with the local labor that's available, but for row crops, for orchard crops, it takes a lot more labor, and there are fewer and fewer young Americans who are willing to do that work. And so if we don't have a young, willing supply of labor, and people who are then gonna put down roots in that community and stay put, and eventually be able to buy a farm and have a future with that farm, we're gonna stop eating. I mean, we're gonna stop having a local supply of food. We're gonna wanna keep eating, and we're not gonna be able to eat Bitcoin, that's for sure. So what Congress should be doing is stopping the tariff chaos, as David mentioned, stopping the immigration chaos with the crackdowns that are going on in our communities. And we also have to stop the corporate consolidation. I am in favor as well of keeping an eye on making sure that we don't have too much of our land being sold to foreign entities, which would create greater food insecurity for us. China in particular has been buying vast swaths of agricultural land around the world just to let it lay fallow in case they one day need it. And that's bad for our economies, that's bad for our communities. And I want to keep a very close eye on that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
All right, so a couple of things. Here's where I'm at. My grandpa was a farmer. He left being a farmer because he could make more money literally working for the university, Washington State University. I had a conversation with a farmer that had 11,000 acres, third generation farmer, went back to the farm to help farm. All he wanted was the ability to make some money, but he literally could not turn up 11,000 acres to make it profitable. That is astronomically unbelievable to me. 11,000 acres. That said, what was killing him was he couldn't get access to water was a concern, access to fertilizer. It was so astronomically expensive he couldn't get what he needed. The alternatives weren't very good. They weren't getting him what he needed. Another thing that was a problem was accessing. His story was absolutely astounding. He had a $500,000 tractor that had a literally $5 part that needed to be replaced. But it took he had to wait 2 weeks for the person to come out and find it, 2 days to fix it, and then $2,000 later his tractor was up and running. That type of situation is catastrophic to a farmer who has to get into the field in a designated time and get out of the field in a designated time. That's untenable. You can't operate a business like that. And additionally, the costs associated with that were prohibitive because it was the software on the machine that was the problem, not the $5 part. Because he literally told the guy, "I think it's this problem," but they had to go through 2 days of research to try to find out and verify it, and then get the software updates to make sure that it was working. We need a better path than that. There has got to be a little bit more competition, a little more active engagement there. That said, very complicated issue. Farm Bill's important. Work and agricultural services are important. Tariffs are important. And USAID, government programs that buy up these goods and services are extraordinarily important for our farmers to keep the prices up. And I would like to talk about it more. Thank you.
Okay. All right, David, if you want to grab the mic. I've been told we have to move into our end question, so I can't ask the labor question. I'm bummed. Okay, but this is the last big one for everyone. And this is general, no specific category. What do you think is the most important thing you can do when you get to Congress?
I try real hard not to come down with one most important thing or issue most of the time because there's so much to work on. But if I have to say just one thing, I guess it's to represent you to the absolute best of my abilities. And I think the way I would do that is, yes, stay accountable to you. Yes, listen to you. Focus on your priorities and make sure that I update those priorities as they change over time. And then I approach the job from my core values, which are integrity, service, and excellence. My parents raised me to always act with integrity. My faith calls me to serve all. And the Air Force taught me to lead with excellence. And wouldn't it be wonderful if our current representative did that, or our entire federal government did that? That you always knew what you were being told was the truth. That you knew all the actions were to serve us Americans, us Eastern Washingtonians, and that the government was doing it to the absolute best of its ability. So I think that sort of service ethic is what is lacking right now in what we need the most of.
All right, thank you, David. Asian?
I was a recruiter. I spent 7 years. I was a master recruiter for the Army National Guard. I think I did a relatively good job considering I was in San Francisco, Marin County, Sonoma County, bastions of conservative military thinking. I put Greg Allman's next door neighbor into the National Guard. But I learned something when I was recruiting. And that is that there is no such thing as a professional relationship. All relationships are personal. When somebody says, Bob and I have a professional relationship, what are you really saying? What you're really saying is we don't like each other. The most important thing you can do to start out in any kind of thing, especially a deliberative body like Congress, is to make friends. Build relationships so that you can go back to these people and work with them. Ro Khanna is working with Thomas Massie. No kidding. One of the most liberal and one of the most conservative members of Congress, finding common ground. That's what we do. Anybody remember the original food stamp program? That was Bob Dole and George McGovern. They had something in common. These were both World War II heroes. who had literally risked their lives during the war and come from ag states. We build those relationships to come back to be able to serve our constituents later. I only know 2 members of Congress personally, but I'll certainly start there.
All right, thank you. Carmela.
My dad's parents met at a wheat harvest down in the Palouse, and they would both tell a story about how Grandma was working in the kitchen and Grandpa had invited her to a Grange dance, and she went and told the farmer's wife that she was going to go to the dance that night, and the farmer's wife said, "No, you're going to stay here and take care of my kids. The farmer and I are going to go to the dance." And my grandma said, "No, you hired me as a cook, not as a nanny. I'm going to the dance." And the farmer's wife said, "Well, if you go to the dance, don't come back here tomorrow. You no longer have a job." So Elsie went to that dance. And Forrest, not being a stupid man, noticed that Elsie was upset. And he asked her why. And she told him. And Forrest marched up to the farmer and said, "I'm out of here." And the farmer, who didn't have very many young men who could drive a 20-mule team, did everything he could to try to get him to stay, and he wouldn't. And my family's stories all revolved around standing up for yourself, standing up for what's right, and making sure that people are treated fairly. And there was a little bit of an edge that you stand up to the man. And when I joined the State Department, I thought, crap, I work for the federal government, I am the man. But what I found out is that you still have opportunities and a requirement to speak truth to power. And I had opportunities over the course of my career where I had to choose between saying yes to something I knew was wrong, or being able to look in the mirror when I got home and know that I was Forrest and Elsie's granddaughter and that I was making them proud. And that's what I would focus on if you send me to Congress.
Thank you, Carmela. Go ahead, Richard.
Fundamentally, people are the priority, period, end dot. Family, neighbor, nation. That is my set of priorities. It's one that I expect to be held accountable to. It's one I expect to talk to you about. It's one I expect that we'll be able to address in many different ways. Family, neighbor, nation. There's no way there's a path forward for any member of Congress to forget about those things, to forget about the people of their district, to make sure that they're understanding what their problems are. I believe very strongly in finding a way, as Bajan said, to work across the aisle. I believe in what is largely going to be an 85% solution for most paths forward. There's going to have to be compromise. There's going to have to be a way that we're not destroying everything that's been done by a previous administration. We can't keep starting over. There has to be long-term continuity. We can't gut the federal government and expect to repair it in 4 years. It's not going to happen. We can't wipe out entire laws and then try to rebuild them in 3 to 4 years. It's not going to happen. We absolutely have to find a way forward where our priorities are focusing on people and being accountable to our districts, not to corporations, to our people. That is one thing I can promise to you as my priority. Yes, we need to work together. Yes, we need to have relationships. Yes, we need to be in line about what our priorities are, but those priorities must be people first. All of your concerns, they're my concerns. I have a family. This is my home. I've experienced, my son started first grade here started in this district. We were in Spokane. We're going to continue on. He's going to graduate. He's planning on to go to WSU. My daughter's going to finish high school. Everything you experience, I understand. That is what I promised you. Accountability and people first.
All right, thank you, Richard. Kevin.
So, when I decided to run for this big seat, what month is it? It's July, so about 8 months ago, end of last year, I was still waking up every single day at my job doing climate change and sustainability consulting, doing the work that I love, knowing that at the end of the day I was making a difference. That me going and clocking into work and working with clients to help them improve their environmental impact was moving the needle in a small way. And for that same reason, I decided to run for Congress, because this is moving the needle in a big way. And I know that my commitment is to doing what is best, like Richard said, for the people. And it's always going to come down, whether it's policy, whether it's decisions that are going to be made, that I will lead with integrity. In my heart, knowing that each and every day I'm still making a difference, that I'm still putting the people of District 5 first, that I'm still representing and doing my job well. Because that is more important than anything to me. Because quite frankly, this is way too hard of a thing to do to just want to turn corrupt. That all of us are being pushed beyond our limits. And that for us, for me, at the end of the day, it comes down to looking at myself in the mirror and knowing that I acted with integrity, that I fought for the people of this district, that I did my all to create a material change for each and every one of you. And that's why I'm running. That's why it's worth doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, all of you. Okay, so I have a couple more, just two more, and these are really quick. All right, so this one is a stand if this describes you. We've heard a rumor of a certification day event to show that you stand in support of the eventual candidate. Stand if you will be in attendance, no matter the top Democrat. Did you get that? I'm hearing that there's a rumor of a certification day event that would show that you stand in support of whoever the candidate eventually is. Stand if you will be in attendance, no matter the top Democrat. So to support whoever is going to win the primary. Good, good. Good to know. We don't like to eat our own.
I will point out, she said Democrat.
Yes.
I did say Democrat. I did say Democrat. Okay. Okay, this one is rapid fire. Ready? Bajan, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Quick, quick, quick.
Vanilla.
Carmela.
Baskin-Robbins daiquiri ice.
Oh.
Richard.
Rocky Road.
Oh yeah. Kevin.
Ben & Jerry's fish food.
Yeah.
David.
Pralines and cream.
Oh, that's a good one.
Perfect for sugar.
Okay, this tells us something about you, each of you. Okay, so thank you all very much for coming, for participating in this. We really appreciate that. So just a couple things in general forever, and I hope someone's gotten some pictures because I forgot to, my camera's in the other room. A couple things.